Hello, everyone, and welcome to League Weekly. This is the first week of August, I believe, or second week? Second week of August, depending on how you look at it. And we are done now, at least in North America, with the split, moving on to playoffs and all sorts of other interesting things happening in other regions that I'm sure I will learn about shortly. Let me go ahead and introduce everyone, or let them introduce themselves. First off, we've got former Yahoo esports employee, now full-time freelancer, Emily Rand. How's it going, Emily?
Hello. Pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm really busy this week because in addition to putting out League of Legends stuff, I'm prepping for the Overwatch World Cup. So
Yeah.
because it's going to be right here in Santa Monica.
Yeah.
Which so that'll be fun.
Wait, where is it?
Yeah. It's up at the airport, I believe. Barker Hangar.
Well, I'll probably try and sneak my way in there once.
Yeah, just check it out. Next up, we have Kelsey Moser, all the way from Germany. How's it going, Kelsey?
I'm doing pretty well. I spend my free time seeing how many players I can get you LCS teams to give me to interview and making them trash talk each other. So it's good.
Yeah, that's good. And then finally, we've got Mark Zimmerman, noted Riot analyst and Biofrost critic himself. How's it going, Mark?
Great.
Yeah.
Got some feedback out of Biofrost. Ready to start up round 2.
Okay. Why Biofrost is a shitter by Mark Zimmerman. That's the new name of this show.
Why is a big bitch?
All right.
No,
All right. All right. We're off to a great start. All right. So first off, let's start off with a place far to the east of here, known as Korea, where we have the LCK playoffs happening.
Yay.
This is an Emily Rand topic. How's it going, Emily?
Good. So last week I tried to hype people up for the final week of LCK. I know at least one person watched it on my recommendation, so I hope you enjoyed it. They tweeted at me. So I was actually really proud. I was like, whoa, I actually got someone to watch this. But it was really exciting. The Africa Jinair, last place spot actually did come down to their game, so that was interesting. And then we had Samsung and Longzhu fighting over first seed, which is an automatic bid to the finals, and Longzhu actually made it against my prediction, and most odds I would have given them earlier in the split.
I got several people to tweet at me about how good Khan is, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm sorry that I did research beyond looking at the Korean solo queue ladder and seeing that this guy was ranked top 3 or whatever. I will never ever do that again, ever. You know? Though he still has a lot of the flaws that I think I pointed out, and I think that it's going to be a big problem for them in the final, but we will talk about that another time. Continue.
Yeah, I'm actually writing a whole article on it, so look forward to that. Because, yeah, I do want to address some of the concerns I have about the team, but I am excited that they made it. That is my neighbor's dog. Anyway.
Kill it.
So anyway, yeah, the first week of playoffs starts this week, and we have Africa and SKT kicking it off, which is actually really interesting because Africa has a strong win rate against SKT, seemingly no matter what their roster is. So, and Africa also has actually bombed out of playoffs with all of their rosters every time they've made it. So, it should be an interesting matchup, especially
which plot armor is the strongest is basically the question.
Yeah, so. Exactly. And also, I mean, SKT, in my opinion, I know people are they're back, they're winning, etc. They beat KT. In an interesting series. I mean, they kind of always beat KT at this point. So, I was just, after KT had this, they lost first game, they had this really amazing second game, and I'd already tweeted, KT are out, they're not going to get their automatic seed to Worlds, because if they had won, they actually would have been guaranteed to qualify either on points or by winning the summer final. And then they lost in game 3, obviously. So, I think for KT fans, you kind of are rooting for SKT to lose, and I still think they have a lot of the flaws that they've had previously, even in their barbecue series. was a little interesting. It wasn't their best showing, I'll just say that. So
there were a lot of people actually tweeting about how like SKT obviously didn't prepare for BBQ, but when you don't like prep wards for Dragon, and then you just like blind face check it and get aced, like that's not BBQ specific. So
it's I don't really know what happened in at some points in some of those games. It just wasn't their best showing, especially prepping for playoffs. So I think it's going to be a really interesting gauntlet to watch, and it starts like our Friday night, early Saturday morning. So it's, I believe, 4 o'clock Eastern time and 1 o'clock Pacific time on like Friday night, Saturday morning.
I'm going to put on my Travis Gafford hat and ask, SKT obviously still has a chance to get to Worlds, but is like what's their path? So like, you know, obviously they can win this split and run the gauntlet basically and make it, but should they fail at any point, they have to go play in another gauntlet, right?
Yeah, but it would require them to basically fail within the first few rounds because they already have a lot of championship points from winning Spring. So they already, like, right now, KT is in the lead for championship points simply because they qualified for what is second seed in this gauntlet. But since SK Telecom have 90 championship points from Spring already and 20 automatically from this split, even if say they completely bomb out and they lose, they're still seeded in the very last place of the regional gauntlet.
Okay.
So it's basically there have to be a lot of bad circumstances for them, and they have to fail at literally every level in order to not make it to Worlds, just because they have a lot of championship points already.
Okay, so SKT's going to Worlds almost certainly.
Yeah, I mean, I would say so.
All right, moving on. First team to qualify for Worlds is
Flash Wolves.
Flash Wolves.
Flash Wolves.
We don't have to discuss this in depth, but I just wanted to bring it up because it was a piece of news that people might not know. So
I mean, they always make it.
Yeah. It was really weird doing power rankings this week because Xander was like, I don't think Flash Wolves deserve to be top 10. I was like, I don't know if any of the teams we have in top 10 right now deserve to be top 10. Like TSM, Immortals, WE, oh gosh, it was a pretty bad week for the top 10. But the Flash Wolves games were interesting because I was like watching 3 different streams at once, and legit every time I went to the LMS one and it was Flash Wolves versus Raze, they were throwing Baron. It happened like 3 times in one game. This is good. I'm glad this is a thing. So
yeah, I asked Xander about it at LCS this weekend. He was just like, I don't know.
All right. So now we've established Flash Wolves has made it, but nobody's very excited about the fact that they've made it. This is what I'm hearing.
I mean, I'm excited because I like Flash Wolves, but in terms of them being like a serious world championship contender, I just don't see it.
I think my feelings on Raze is that the fact that they were doing really well and nearly at the top of the league for much of the split is really kind of bad. In terms of the season because of like the way that their mid laner plays and the limit. They're basically budget Flash Wolves is what Raze are. So they play very similarly, but they have like weaker players. So it's not like discount G2 where they don't actually play it all the same.
Oh god.
But I think that, so to me that's like kind of worrying, and I am sort of afraid that LMS will have a showing at Worlds this year similar to last year. So,
Laura Pooface in Twitch chat says, "So is this LO's weakest looking season in general?"
No.
No, I don't think. That's the point. Just like it's hard to justify anyone being super highly rated in most regions, just because they're all the tops, at least from the regular season, look pretty close together.
So it also could be the strongest looking.
To do with the fact that we've seen like really sudden patch breakups. Also, if that makes sense. Like I think the fact that we've had very sudden like patch shifts, 7.14 and 7.15, makes it like the teams are still kind of jarred by some of the changes. So you see teams that are usually at the top might adapt differently to pick late to pick priorities, like TSM, for example. And so then we have like teams that are bad at a lot of other things, suddenly understanding the patch well, and then so just like creates an environment for a lot of upsets. But then you have like this really long time where everyone's at boot camp. So I think Worlds might still be like fine and exciting.
For Flash Wolves,
oh no, go.
I was gonna ask. I mean, like they came into MSI with like this almost ridiculous level of hype, where it's like a lot of people were saying like the best team outside Korea. They have the play style to beat the Korean teams, and like all that stuff was like super hype. Is there any level of that hype still remaining heading into Worlds, or is it absolutely a loss?
It's a little bit better for them because the support meta is better, assuming that like Ardent Center is getting nerfed. But yeah, so I think the support meta is better, so I think it does look better for them, and they were kind of competitive at Rift Rivals, and I think that the team generally just like has a pretty good feel, so maybe they'll adapt to the patch well, and they'll be doing pretty well, because they looked like they were doing really well until this week, so I think it's, and they didn't play last week because of the hurricane. So that was like kind of unfortunate. So we haven't really seen them on the new patch yet. So we'll see before I start saying that they're just like terrible. So.
All right. Next up, this is my favorite topic, I think.
Oh boy!
For a long time, European players have been fleeing their region to come to the Golden Land, much like many, many, many years ago, Europeans left the tyranny and terrible situation in Europe to come to the New World. And now it's gotten so bad that even the teams are trying to come to NALCS. 4 teams, 40%, including the top teams, the most well-loved teams, have tried to come to NALCS. We will inevitably reject these imposters. I know it. But either way, this has happened.
Well, I'm actually kind of curious. Well, do you think that they'll be rejected?
Well, like, so hang on. Let me toss it to Emily first because this is her topic. I don't know if she wants to rephrase it.
Hijack it.
So yeah, I just wanted to. That's a very interesting introduction to this topic. I wanted to discuss it because although I know that like Kelsey and I did an entire video kind of breaking down Europe as a whole and a lot of people's opinions on it after this happened, and also the whole Europe is boring, change the format thing, which we also discussed on this show last week. But I did think it was really telling that there were European teams applying for franchising in NA, especially since a few of them said that they wouldn't necessarily consider it, but that like I don't know. To me, this came off more as a statement to the EU LCS being like, do something, than necessarily them applying specifically for franchising. But that could just be like me misconstruing it. But like in terms of how this came out, it seems to me like it's more of that than necessarily applying to have a spot.
Yeah. All right, so Kelsey, you were asking me, do I think... I have 2 things here. Kelsey, first off, I think your question was, do I think that they'll get rejected? Yes, I do think they'll get rejected because, one, I do not think that, with the exception of maybe G2, from a business standpoint, any of these teams will be as attractive as the like crazy business folks that I'm hearing rumors of applying to the NALCS right now, and some of those I think have already come out, you know. But
I mean, there are still like partnerships with like Miami Heat and Boston Bruins, and
yeah, I know, but all like
I know. There's like there are all sorts of weird, crazy rumors, but at the same time, like Fnatic has a lot of longevity, and
yeah, but European longevity.
So
Like you're not.
Esports longevity in general, though, like they also have like a Dota 2 team that is in like Southeast Asia. And
I don't think Riot gives a shit about people's Dota 2 teams, to be honest. Like I just don't think that like that's
sure.
I think to some extent, yes. If you can say, if you are, I don't know, evil geniuses, and you say, hey, like we're a North American organization, we've had success on these other things. And then you team up with, like, let's say it was Evil Geniuses going to MSG. Yes, I think that whole package of we understand the esports space, plus we have this business stuff works out well. I think that if you are Fnatic, they probably don't care about the fact that you have a successful Dota 2 team. And yes, I know that those teams have relationships with existing sports franchises. I do not know how deep those are, and in some cases I've heard that they are not that deep in terms of the relationship. Yeah. And I just, like, so even setting aside the fact that, like, you don't want to start this trend of pulling stuff out of Europe and bringing it to North America besides the players, I think that you also don't want to, I don't think that the teams, besides maybe G2, are that impressive compared to some of the partners that that will come out here in the RFP process. I also just think that it's obvious that, you know, if the EU LCS was in a much better place, and especially if the EU LCS was in a stronger place than North America, which I think most people would say is not the case from a business standpoint, you might consider one of these teams, but I think as it stands, you just wouldn't do that.
So I would love, and I don't think this is that likely, but I would fucking love it if they just let in one team. And you just get this ridiculous like storyline of like the team that betrayed EU. All of Europe now hates this team. Does NA like them now? I don't know. Like if Fnatic came over, like you just let in Fnatic. Or G2, like the bad boys of Europe, whatever they were trying to be for half a splitter year, whatever. Like I feel like that would be so fun narratively, though absolutely abysmal in terms of everything else.
Yeah, and that's why they won't do it.
Well, there's also
as the
like
outside, love it.
So oh no, go.
I was just gonna say that there are just like a lot of weird situations in Europe right now, so I'm like not. Yeah, I guess I'm more afraid that they'd consider it than I think that they actually would, if that makes sense. Like, I'm actually more afraid, so that prompts me to react more extremely to the situation.
Yeah, I think if you're afraid, they won't do it. Riot is very risk adverse, so this would be a very risky move, so I don't think that they will do it.
We'll see, and some of these teams, like, obviously, I think they're the less attractive ones have less roots in Europe and actually have NA ownership, and so I don't know.
Yeah, that's part of the problem is that, like,
but I think that those orgs are like the less attractive ones.
Yeah.
Like Splice and Misfits are the less attractive ones for sure.
Yeah, that's part of the problem too, is like why there's this weird inverse relationship where the teams that are most attractive to North America are the teams you definitely don't want to pull out of Europe. So I just feel like that also should sit in the ground. So I mean, I think it's funny. I'm set, like, as much as I play the NA troll, and in some ways I do think it is a sad thing for Europe that like I know I would be really sad if like CLG, TSM, I don't know about Dignitas, but like several of the different teams applied for EU and tried to leave my region. I would just, like that story. I almost feel like Riot should have said, "Don't. We are not going to accept your applications," because it is just that story breaking. Just as like a kick in the ass to like the already really depressed European region. It's just you feel really bad for those guys right now.
It's also like sparked all sorts of other rumors, like the one LCS and rumors like that I think, I don't know, like if they would happen, I think it would be a step in the opposite direction of what Riot wants, which is to say that this is going to be much bigger and it's going to be longer, and it's going to last a long time. So we want to make sure that like just like kind of hacking a region seems kind of like it would be counter to what they'd want. So we'll see though.
I mean, to me, this mostly just feels kind of like what was happening a year and a half ago when the NA team orgs were all getting in a little kerfuffle with Riot and things were leaking somehow. That's what this reminds me of, where like EU orgs wished that they were getting franchised because that's obviously much better for them. They're not, so they put up a little fight by applying and then somehow leaking it, you know? That's what this feels like to me, more than like a really serious attempt by the EU teams and a really serious consideration by Riot.
On the plus side, though, I do think...
Mark? I just did this.
Okay.
I do think it's kind of like woken up the EU broadcast and also the players. And like when I talk to the players even, they're aware that, okay, we're not marketing ourselves well, right? Everyone says we're boring. There's obviously something wrong because we're not boring. We just don't feel like trash talking because we don't like the community backlash, but then it's like causing a bunch of other problems and we don't stream. And so I think that that's like one positive thing, is that if something comes out of this, it will be the players and broadcast become more aware of this kind of issue, I guess.
Yeah.
I actually do like your point, Mark, of like the 4 teams apply and then leak it just so that they can, because it forced Riot to come out and say like, oh yeah, we are making changes that will be rev share friendly and all. Yeah,
exactly.
I'm not sure that those 4 teams are that organized enough to see them.
I mean, that's always possible, but it does feel kind of like the same thing where, like, you know, NA play, like, orgs are all like, man, we're just not making any money, and then suddenly a month later, right, it's like, here's all these rev sharing ideas that we've been working on for so long. You know, it feels just kind of like that same situation.
Yeah. All right. Anything else to talk about with EU teams applying for NA LCS? Actually, we should just go around the horn. I don't think that any of these teams get in. Do any of the other 3 of you?
It would be weird to me if they would, and the reason isn't even... It actually has nothing to do with a strong application, but it has to do with the current inter-regional movement policy, in that I think it'd be weird in an environment that's primarily player-driven as opposed to organizationally driven in terms of fandom, to have to dump so much of your roster in order to come to North America. Like, I feel like that's automatically something that, like, European teams in this application process is kind of stacked against them, if that makes any sense.
Yep.
So
yeah, it's like it does raise other questions about other things, like if they did accept them, would they revisit because obviously, like, the NA orgs have all been pushing for changes to the region locking policy, and that discussion's been going on separately as well. So
sometimes I just need a yes or no answer from you 3. Emily, will any of these teams make it in?
No, because of the reasons that
Kelsey.
I said.
Reclaiming my time.
Kelsey?
Reclaiming my time. Have you guys seen that?
No.
I know.
Oh, God. I don't even follow politics. How have I seen this thing? All right.
Kelsey, are any of these teams going to make it into the NALCS?
I'm too afraid to say anything.
What?
I'm scared.
You're just like the EU players. No personality because you won't take the risk to put yourself out there. All right? You're just too afraid of the community backlash. All right, I'm going to put you down for...
I'm not afraid of the community backlash, but yeah.
I'm putting you down as a no. Mark?
Yes!
One of them is going to make it in?
No good reason other than it would just be a boatload of fun
to
see Reckless in NA and have everyone hate him from around the world.
Okay. Will Omargod is... Wait, that sentence doesn't even make sense. Will Omargod holding CLG back?
It was a test, Travis, and you did not catch it before you got
Yeah,
to it.
sure. Let's say it was a test, all right? Let's go with that.
I assumed it was just you trying to make him look dumb for saying it word for word without noticing it. But go ahead.
No. Well, it's kind of the same. He did notice it in that sense, but not like he read these before he started the show at all.
No.
So will Omargod hold CLG back? I think the thing is right now we can say yes, he has been holding them back, but moving forward, how big of a problem will he be? Because especially with that TSM series this week where they got 2-0'd, game 1 was kind of like, man, they kind of just got smashed with similar team comps. Hard to extrapolate too much, but in game 2, Sven was kind of put in a weird position and was able to get out better than I think a lot of people thought he should have, based off how he had to go bottom like level 2 and kind of cheese that gank out. And Omar didn't super punish him hard, and then did not have a great game afterwards in terms of like finding great engages or getting ultimates onto key targets. It was pretty much entirely on Afros and Gages. So with all that in consideration, do you think that moving forward into the playoffs and most likely eventually a gauntlet run, will Omargod potentially be the big factor in why they, if it happens, fail to make Worlds?
As we know, Mark Zimmerman is not only the foremost Biofrost and TSM hater, but he is also the foremost Dardoch hater. So I think his answer is probably no.
Whoa!
It's just my prediction.
I was gonna let you guys know before I said anything.
I think it's an interesting question, especially since CLG very publicly and visibly made the move to not to like start Omar over Dardoch. So in that way, like in terms of holding CLG back, the team obviously felt that that was not the case. I think a lot of it's going to depend on their prep week, obviously. Like, it's really going to come down to how much can they do in 2 weeks. Because very, very visibly, he's still not fully integrated with the team. In terms of champion pool, I'm not even calling him out and saying he has a super small champion pool. What I'm saying is the only champion he's been successful on with this team has really been Gragas. So obviously they need to find something else that works for the team, especially since it kind of means that they can't flex Gragas Chop if they want to, which is pretty... I'm not going to say it's huge, but it's a tool that I think they would like to have in their arsenal for sure. So I think, it's really going to depend on how much they get done, but I think they have a very, very difficult task ahead of them, and they only have, 2 weeks to find a solution?
I'm going to go out and say that, like, instead of comparing CLG with Omar to CLG with Dardoch, I'd rather compare CLG with Omar with CLG to Smithy, because I feel like we knew that CLG was going to have to make a change eventually. So with that in mind, do we think that they'd be better off retaining Smithy in terms of getting a shot at Worlds? And I don't necessarily think that they would, because I feel like that team just had lost motivation in some regards, or they were just like kind of disconnecting in terms of the unit that made them really strong before. And the roster change to Dardoch probably just made the players feel like they were moving in a direction. So just a roster change in general was necessary. So if that's the case, like, what were their alternatives going to be? And you can look at Mike Young, but I don't even think Mike Young would have been a good option, because Mike Young has this like very weird mindset about how you're supposed to play the game and in what direction you're supposed to play the game, and he wants to have a big role in comms, and I don't know if that would work really well for CLG. It obviously has a lot of risks that I brought up before when we've talked about P1, and P1 are not doing well, so I think that probably that's not like necessarily a good alternative. And I don't know, I don't feel like he's really holding CLG back. I just feel like they decided to... I actually think maybe they would have had a better chance with Dardoch, though. But I think that they decided to invest in something that might give them better success in the long run, even if they don't make Worlds, rather than Dardoch, which they felt like had no long-term future. So I think in that regard, no, he's not holding them back.
Here's my take. I think... I agree, like the whole Smithy thing, it's a little weird to compare them, because I think they just stagnated as a team, like you said, and I don't think Smithy has this godlike summer season if he stays on CLG. He probably had this whole trade thing happen and was kind of like, okay, I got to fucking prove myself, and like had a mentality shift as well as the whole team. So I think, it is a situation where the change was good for both CLG and Smithy, but CLG was contesting for number one for a long period of time over the course of this split, and obviously TSM improved and yada, yada, yada. But I do feel like the one position that they're weak at is really jungle, and I think that does stop them from like making finals and winning finals. They might still get to Worlds through the gauntlet, but I do think that he's a little bit too much of a liability to probably win to get through the playoffs.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like you just keep Dardoch, and then you pull the H2K where you just quarantine him like they did with Forgiven last year. He shows up, you guys win some games on stage, and then he goes off and does his thing, calls out European teams or something for having girlfriends around at 4 a.m. or whatever it was that Forgiven did to North American teams. Yeah.
We should. Yeah, I think like if that's the narrative you're going with, then we need to have. Then they should have kept Dardoch like just kind of hanging out instead of letting him go to Liquid, so that they could play the rest of the season until playoffs with Omargod, and then put Dardoch in. Because then like you need some breathing room from Dardoch, right? Just like give it some space, and then put him back in.
But then does Omargod have the confidence because there's someone behind him who might take his position if he plays bad in playoffs? That's the question.
Oh, see, just multiple layers, so many reasons to keep Dardoch around on CLG.
Mark's next topic is in all capitals, and it just says damage rating with an exclamation mark. So I'm excited to find out what this is.
We can go anywhere we want with this topic because obviously it's so broad, but this week, Riot released a stat that they call damage rating, and it tries to do away with some of the biases that current DPM has. So problem with current DPM, heavily influenced by game time, heavily influenced by champion you're playing. Poke champions have super inflated damage numbers, as well as like something like a Gnar, which just wails away on a tank, has super high damage numbers. There's like all of these different things that inflate these kind of numbers. So this stat, damage rating, was attempting to do away with those by taking into account what champions you're playing, if it's in a win or a loss. I think they try to take into account game time. And then they also had this other thing that they took into account, which is how often you were near enemy champions, aka like, if you're near someone frequently, you'll probably be hitting them more, which makes sense. But the problem was, unless I missed it and they did it recently, I don't think they ever released how they actually calculate damage rating. And so
haven't.
Yeah, so what happens is, I trust Riot's stats team to put out a good stat, but like I can't argue with or against this stat if I don't understand its biases, because every number in League will always still have biases. So I don't know how you guys felt about it, but I like the idea of trying to push advanced metrics, but I don't know why they would not tell me what the metric is so I can then work with it.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of...
Okay.
Oh, no, go.
I mean, they also said around the world, and I'm assuming it doesn't include LPL numbers. But then, like, if you're including LMS numbers that has, like, a similar high, like, level of confrontation and stuff like this, like, does this skew the stat? So I don't know. It's just, like, we really don't know the stuff that goes into it at all. So that's, like, the really worrying thing. Also, I mean, there have been advanced metrics that Riots have released and been really proud of, and I don't necessarily think their interpretation of them, even on broadcast, has been, like, super good.
Like
what? So
what?
that's another... Okay, so, like, the example I was about to bring up is just the jungle proximity. I think a lot of times, because you don't have a time to explain what jungle proximity is every time and the nuances of jungle proximity, a lot of casters, like, I'm throwing them a bone here, will just say, like, high jungle proximity equals good. And I'm afraid that that's what's going to happen with this damage rating thing, So I'm kind of afraid of that being a thing as well, because when you introduce, like, these more complicated metrics and then you want to boil them down to a casual audience so you don't have to explain them every time they come up, it ends up being, like, super shorthand and no one really understands, like, why it's good specifically, or situations where it could be bad, or things like that.
Yeah, so someone in chat said they mentioned in the article later the biases in the number, or like the calculation, but they don't show you the calculation. So if I'm trying to say, like, let's take Jensen for an example, because this is the kind of guy who got blown up in the thread a little bit afterwards because his damage rating wasn't that good, his DPM numbers aren't that good, all these other things. And when you look at his DPM numbers, he played 16 games of Orianna, and Orianna worldwide, DPM-wise, is not a top 10 mid lane champion. It is number 11 or 12 out of like 17 champions with 10 or more games played. I started doing this research. Either way, what I'm saying is Jensen's main champion that he carries on is not a high damage champion, generally speaking. So when you compare it to Froggen, who has really good DPM numbers, who played 13 games with Corki, his numbers are lower. And generally speaking, of high DPM numbers, he was playing Orianna by far the most. So that's great. I can argue with DPM. But when I start trying to make this argument now with with damage rating, I have no fucking idea what his proximity to his teammates or to enemies are. Like, if that number is super high, then I can start saying, well, the reason his rating's low is because this variable of this equation is inflated because he stays mid the whole time because he's playing Orianna and never goes into a side lane. And then it makes sense, but I don't know these things because it's not public.
Yeah, I mean, I think with any kind of advanced metric, I feel like you have to serve two audiences. And one is the casual audience, which is kind of like what the broadcast is going for, right? But then the other are the more analytically minded people. And in League of Legends, there are a lot of those people. And those are the people who are going to want to know, like, what is the algorithm for this? Or even, can you explain how all of these numbers, like, were gathered to reach the conclusion? And that is really frustrating for someone like me who, like, absolutely loves these kind of statistics. But then it's also really frustrating because with any statistics, they require context. Like, for me, when you're using statistics at any point in time, whether it's something super simple to understand or something really complex, like if you want to get into complex sabermetrics for League of Legends at some point, of which it'd be really difficult because there are so many variables in the game as is. But anyway, like, you really want to provide a lot of context. So, for example, Mark provided context by saying with DPM, you have to take into account, like, champion choice. With something I always do when trying to talk about kill participation, especially in some of my jungler articles, is to take into account, like, the average kill participation for that team specifically, because sometimes, especially combined with the eye test, which is the more important part, it can tell you how much a team actually team fights, or if they prefer split pushing, or if they prefer, like, smaller skirmishes that are like 2v1 or 3v2 or whatever. I think that everything needs context. And so the frustrating thing for me was just seeing a lot of people jump out and try to discuss this, especially with Jensen. I'm assuming, Mark, you're probably going to do some sort of video on this for your Reddit thing, but, like, because it seems like a very you topic. But, like, yeah, that was the frustrating thing when talking about Jensen, because it, like, a lot of people were just citing the statistic, providing no context, and using it to support their argument that this is why they think Jensen sucks or whatever. And that's super frustrating to see that kind of discussion going on. Not even because of the conclusion, even though I actually should be upfront and say I disagree with that conclusion, but not because of the conclusion, but just because the manner in which it's being discussed and the manner in which these statistics are being used. So I think whenever Riot releases a statistic, what I'd like to see is just a general, like, better contextual discussion. And I know that's really difficult in marketing to the casual audience on broadcast. So yeah, that's kind of where I am, I guess.
I think it's fine for, like, Riot to kind of not be the one to do all the interpretation, right? Like, they don't need to go through the list of all the players and their damage ratings and say, like, here's where potential biases are. But when a fan can take this stat and say something like Jensen is overrated because his damage numbers are low or whatever, his damage rating's low, I can't even combat that because I don't know how this works. And that's the problem for me.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, how would Mark necessarily even do a big blame game here, because it's, like, kind of hard to argue without the full context. The other, I mean, it just feels weird that Riot, like, have this weird need to hide some of these, like, technical things in general, even in champion releases. Like, the champion designer for Kayn was weird about releasing the number of orbs it takes to transform, and it's like, why? I don't really understand.
Mark?
Nothing. I cannot comment. Let's just say there's even more weird stuff about that champion.
Yeah.
Great. Well, it's interesting. I have never really had too much of an issue with the design team, but lately I've been more and more frustrated just because I've been hearing from teams that are frustrated with the amount of changes that come out, and they've been told, like, there's not going to be a big patch change or big patch changes around playoffs, and then there are. and then they start hotfixing more, which messes with a lot of players because they might be practicing something, and then it suddenly gets hotfixed, and then, you know, it's just kind of aggravating hearing that there's even... I'm a very big fan of transparency and all things esports related, and it's frustrating whenever there's not so much transparency. All right, anyway, let us move on. All right, to the hottest strife, conflict, whatever you want to call it, in the League of Legends esports right now. Last week on this show, Mark Zimmerman continued a conversation he had previously had. I think it was on the broadcast, right? Or on one of your shows, GLT, I think. You had said you previously mentioned it. Where he said that Biofrost does not have the champ pool, or he's concerned he doesn't have the champ pool that he wishes he did. I cut this out and posted it separately on YouTube, and everyone was like, what does Mark think he's talking about? Look at all these champions he's played. How dare he do this?
You should have cut the part where he said he hopes TSM bombs out and just added it to
yeah. And then
just make me look like a complete hater.
And then this week, as I was walking to Biofrost over from the fan interaction area to the place where I was interviewing, he's like, "Hey Travis, you know that thing that you had on your show where Mark said that thing?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Everyone linked that to me this week," and I was like, "Okay, I will ask you about it." And so then I asked him about it, and he was super polite and was like, "I could totally see where he's coming from in saying that I'm shit. Like, it's a perfectly reasonable thing for him to think, even though I think, you know, like, maybe in these situations I'm not, or, you know, whatever. But, like, it's cool, you know, like, everybody has their opinion, and Mark has his, and, like, it's completely fine." And then, now Mark is back under fire again.
That's an EU answer.
And by the way, if you want, no personality. If you want to see the interview, it's up on my YouTube channel. I just posted it there. It's also on the second page of Reddit, I think, if you prefer to discover stuff there. So,
all right. So, right as a kind of diatribe as that was, Travis, it's not really the topic. So, I mean, obviously, I'm not going to go over my argument again. I wasn't saying Biofrost can't play these champions. TSM's not picking them. And then I don't care what you pull up from 4 weeks ago I'm talking about right now. Anyways, that was a whole thing. Biofrost defended himself. Great. I love that. But I just wish he had more fire when he did it. Like, I know he's Canadian. I know he's a nice boy. So I'm not saying necessarily that, like, he needs to come out and say I'm an idiot. But I just wish he was like, I wish he just said I was wrong, you know? I wish... Because I don't even want a back and forth. Because it always favors the content creator when you have a back and forth. The pro player doesn't have their own platform necessarily.
Not really. I mean, I don't think that's accurate.
You don't think so?
I think it definitely favors the players because the fans like the players.
Well, so I was gonna say yes, fans like the players more. But if, like, let's say Biofrost said I was wrong, and then I put out another video saying I think he's wrong.
Oh yeah, it's your job to create this content.
Job is to shut the fuck up and practice, and my job is to talk about it. So I think at some point it does circle back around to favor the content. Maybe maybe you guys have a different opinion because you guys have been in this doing this longer than me technically. So I'm sure you guys might have a different experience. But for me, when I was in the team environment and, like, SI was going around and SI would make fun of our players, if you shot back at them, eventually the fans are like, you shouldn't even be listening.
Yeah, no, that's a perfect example because Thorin, it's like Thorin says something.
Be super persistent about it as a content creator,
right?
But if like you put out your piece of content and they say no, you're wrong, fans are like, ha!
Yeah.
So that time, 100% they will agree. But it just created, like, a weird back and forth. But I just wish, like, one, they responded to criticism on a more individual level. And, like, I feel like that would create a lot more hype around the discussions than, like, there's been some chirping about your champion pool, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm glad Travis was specific and said, Mark said this, or, you know, Emily said this, or Kelsey said this, you know. Like, I would prefer if that was that. And then the players, and I understand Biofrost isn't the guy, but, like, if, let's say it was a criticism at Double Lift or a more outspoken player, that they're just like, I think they're full of shit. Like, I would love that. I don't know how you guys feel, but personally, I'm not like afraid of a back and forth with a pro player or an argument. Like, and I would prefer to see that than, like, what happens right now, like you said, in Europe and a little bit in North America, where, like, I can see where they're coming from and there's some truth in it, but it's not really that way, and here's why.
Kelsey just admitted she's afraid to even say if EU teams are going to get in North America. Of course she's afraid of going head-to-head with these players.
Yes, I'm terrified of Biofrost. Nah, I mean it's pretty good because sometimes it's like I will be interviewing a player who I know has read something where I've criticized him, and he's like, "Well, some people will say this."
Yeah.
And I think they're wrong. And it's very pointed, but yeah. So I think it's a little bit interesting. I mean I don't mind the dialogue. I can see why there are reasons not to have the dialogue on both the content creation and the pro player side. I think especially like someone like me, I mean the welding green thing, yeah. There's definitely a certain like amount of gravitas to being in the scene. And I think for the pro player, yeah, if the content creator continues to like push the dialogue, it just seems like they're being like nitpicky and sore loser and everything. So I think that there's like two sides to that. I think it would be cool if we had more of it, because if we did have more of it, then it wouldn't be, I don't think there would be as much like of a stigma, and it wouldn't be as immediate fan reaction, like citing one way or the other just because of the content creator said or the pro player said, and then you could have a lot more of these like types of discussions that I think would ultimately benefit the scene more. But again, it would be a huge time thing. It's another type of content, and then teams aren't necessarily sure like what types of content they want to invest in or what types of content they want to do. So I understand why it's not something that they're focusing on right now.
I'm sad that nobody ever came out with the caster tier list, because a couple different people said they were.
Like Reggie tweeted it. Yeah. I was like, I can't wait for this shit. Didn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Emily? Do you want to go to war with pro players?
Not particularly.
Go to war, but like more engagement.
I mean I would. It's a little weird to me, but cool because like I don't know, esports is very much its own thing, right? So coming from a more traditional sports background where there's like a more clear separation, I guess, between content creators and media and the athletes themselves, and just a lot more developed infrastructure. I think one thing that's actually really cool about League of Legends esports and being in League of Legends esports is that you can be so close to the players. So in that regard, I really like the idea of having kind of like a funny back and forth, like calling each other out kind of thing and getting people riled up. I think the only thing is like I hope both sides and the audience know that, just because I don't know, like I'm really bad at dealing with a lot of like personal attacks. Like I'll be super upfront about that. I really handle it poorly. The person that hates me the most is myself. So in that way, like a lot of what people say, it's never going to get to the level of like what I think of myself, but it's still really exhausting for me to deal with mentally. So in that regard, I would just want to make sure that people would know that it was an open dialogue and not me personally attacking a player, because I don't want to make an extra effort to invite even more personal attacks than I already kind of received.
I remember when like I would have these conversations with Emily about like criticism she would have of teams, and I would say, you know, you should publish that. And then so like she started working on things where she wanted to criticize Faker for a specific thing he does in games. And I was like, you should call that things Faker does. And she chickened out and she called it things SKT does. And this is like the perfect Emily content problem right there, you know?
Yeah, I think it can be weird being as close as it is in esports. Actually, I sometimes have the opposite problem where like I was at a house party that Scara threw, and a handful of pro players showed up, and I was like, I railed on you guys yesterday on GLT. Have you seen that?
They don't watch your content, Mark.
Which is fine. Like I don't care.
It's more like when people say stuff on the broadcast. That's I think the bigger problem.
Yeah, but I mean, the GLT thing or the thing you're talking about with Biofrost wasn't on.
No, I know it wasn't. I'm just saying, like, I think pro players I don't think consume much of this content unless they're in the headline. And I think that the only exception is obviously the broadcast, because people will see it, or it's so high profile that people will hear about it or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, either way, it's like this kind of stuff.
Although
so
I did love it.
A little too close.
I did love it when you guys rated all the different pro players, and then Scar tweeted that thing that was like, "Say something mean to me" or whatever, and Keith just replied with, "You rated me as the worst player in the NALCS" or something to Scar, and Scar was just like, "Ouch, this actually did get to me."
I mean, we did that to just push the envelope, because like this was when all the tier lists were coming out.
Yeah.
We're like, let's go next level and like literally assign hundreds.
Yeah,
of
it was
zero
almost
ratings.
like a parody. Yes, I know.
Yeah.
But that was good though. So to sum it all up, first you were disappointed in Biofrost Champ Pool, and then he politely addresses it and disagrees, and now you're disappointed. You are just like you're just trying to fight this guy as much as possible. I can't wait to cut this clip out and put it on YouTube because it's gonna be so great. I'm just gonna be like, Mark is now angry.
Like I attacked your champion pool, Vincent.
So now we understand the real reason why Mark Zimmerman hates TSM is that he just wants the abuse.
Yeah.
Like he's really just...
They're too media quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we discovered about Mark today.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. This is the final week of EU LCS. They've decided to call it quits after finding out that their teams are all trying to come to North America, and it's done. So
that's too close to home.
Kelsey, are you headed back to America after the final week, or what's happening?
No, I mean I'm excited because I think there's some like actual hype games. I put out an interview where like I was glad that Perks did a lot of trash talk actually. So that was kind of fun. But it's like G2 and Fnatic is the series that a lot of people are looking forward to within Group A, and then Group B is H2K versus Unicorns of Love. So I think it would be really fun thought it would be fun to highlight them. There are cool matchups and cool storylines, both of them. Obviously, like the major Kings of Europe storyline with Fnatic and G2. There's a lot of, I think Perks went like two ways where he really bigged up SOAS, and then like he brought Reckless down, which I thought was really cool and kind of fun and different. And then of course like the rookies kind of aligned in positions, and it's Fnatic have just come off of like a bad week with Roccat. G2 are on the rise. People are saying actually G2 is the better team now, and Fnatic's been the better team the entire season. So I think that's a cool one. H2K versus Unicorns of Love. You've got like the two kind of star top laners, Odo Omna and Vizichachi, except Vizichachi has been having like a terrible season after getting MVP last split. So there's a lot of cool stuff. Like Unicorns are playing like just played this weird early game comp, and then which is something they never do, and H2K have been practicing team fighting a lot. So the question is like, is the old narrative still true? So there's a lot of cool stuff in the last week, and also just so even though like there isn't a lot of fight for seeding, which is a big thing that people complain about, I think the games themselves and the storylines within the games are really cool. So
very good. Anybody have anything to add to that, or are we just gonna?
Well, I was just gonna ask
EU advertisement.
I was gonna ask if you had to put someone to like win the whole split, in the playoffs, who would it be? Like, who's like the team that you think is the favorite?
I mean, I actually do think it'll be G2, just because I think they understand things a little bit better. Like, you can't give up waves mid. There are a lot of teams that just don't do that. And Fnatic, I think their big thing is that they still have issues with not predicting like side trades unless they initiate them themselves, or not predicting reactions to side trades that they initiate themselves, but reacting well to the enemies. It's really okay. This is like overly convoluted, but I think Fnatic have a lot of issues. So yeah, and their 1-3-1 setups, like they focus too much on trying to pinch side lane and they don't like really protect their mid flank, and that's been an issue for a really, really long time. So even though everyone's like, yeah, Fnatic are better, they aren't playing side lane AD carries anymore. That was never the problem. The problem was that when they set up for these side lane AD carries, it was like because they didn't know how to play correctly, So sorry,
Twitch chat distracted me. Are you saying Fnatic's gonna win?
No, she said G2.
No, G2.
Okay. And who's facing them in the finals?
I mean, well, the cool thing is that Fnatic will finish most likely with the high seed unless they lose to Ninjas in Pajamas. So a lot of people were making like the blue shell joke because Rocket is the one team that kind of has taken games off Fnatic before, and that series was like painfully close this past week. So people were making the blue shell joke since Rocket's like not very good, but they have like NIP would be the ultimate blue shell because they've won fewer games and fewer series than.
So you think Fnatic?
Well, I think Fnatic finished first in their group, and G2 will probably take out whoever they face from the other group, or whoever they face first of all in the quarterfinal, and then they'll probably also win their semifinal. And like Perks is predicting a G2 Fnatic final. I mean, there are some people who say that H2K is better than Fnatic. I kind of see the argument there a little bit, but I think it would be really hard to have difficult to have a G2 H2K final with the way that the groups will be stacked up. So
you think Fnatic?
I think G2.
G2, I know, but I'm saying who's going to play against them in the finals?
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Fnatic.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's G2 versus Fnatic in the finals.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a lot of blue shell talk.
I mean, we have time before
Perks says
that,
this.
Travis. I know EU talk is like your favorite thing.
No,
ever,
sometimes I just need the answer. You know. All right.
So.
All right, and then
we aren't at the final yet, though. Is my point. So.
Yeah, but it's fun to make predictions. How does LPL have good teams, Kelsey? This is a question we've all been asking ourselves. I interviewed Reginald yesterday. That interview will be going out sometime in the next week or so, and he said he's not concerned about China, or at least not nearly as much as he is about Korea. So,
I mean,
how does LPL have good teams?
For free. I feel like that's the Reddit title that you put on. It's like, I'm not nearly as concerned about China as I am about Korea. Well, no fucking kidding. But yeah, I think that the surprising thing is that I felt like all split. We've had WE and maybe EDG, but then suddenly there are teams making a last surge, either based on patch or the fact that they're doing stuff. And so my question
RNG is back.
Like, yeah, I mean, UCI came back. There have been some more like Chinese AD carries just kind of like slipping in there. EDG no longer have Zet. They replaced iBoy.
He looks like he's 12, by the way.
Allegedly, they've had actually in their organization since he was 14, so he just wasn't allowed to play. But he has been. Like,
he's still not 14?
And he apparently just turned 17 like the past couple weeks, but. So that's a whole different China thing. But so my question kind of is this like, and some of these rosters, man, like Jingdong, I wouldn't say Jingdong are a good team, but they announced their roster at the beginning of the years with Loken, Xi, and Doinbi, and you guys, none of these names probably matter to you. But the point is that like they announced these rosters and a bunch of other subs, and everyone automatically said, okay, the best roster is going to be the one with like Pabi, Xingyi, Doinbi, Loken, and they played so many support players. They don't have the same support players anymore. But it's like, finally, they're playing okay, and that's the roster they're starting with. And you're just wondering, why did it take you this long? And that happens in LPL all the time. So for me, it's kind of like, why is it like there's this sudden surge at the end of the split? And I don't think it's sandbagging. Is it just like orgs are this incompetent, or have they just been like, we're going to give our players a run, you know? Like, I know you guys probably don't have a better answer than I do, but just like thought processes, I don't know, why are we suddenly seeing at the very end teams surge up?
Isn't it because all the teams everywhere look weird because of the patches?
I mean, yeah, they look.
I mean, that's what's happening with Dig.
It's not just that, because you would think that IG and RNG are actually playing like very counter to the patch. They're playing, because we talked about this a little bit last time. They're playing these very like heavy, all in, super early, 1-3-1 style stuff. Lots of Rumble Cane for IG, and so I don't know. It's interesting. I think that IG, since they got their roster for the summer, have always looked like a team that could get it together. So maybe it really is just like they finally clicked, and that would make sense. But some of the other ones, like Newbie, has been a team that have had, I don't know, like they must have fielded 20 players this year. Like people think TL is ridiculous. Like, have you looked at Newbie's list? I don't know, man. And then they're finally fielding a roster that is making it in. And then Dan, everyone has been asking, like, why did Dan run these random 5 subs for the entire cross-conference section, and they're back to running, like, with their starting roster? I don't even understand, like, half of the sub stuff that's going on in LPL. It's really weird. But suddenly we have, like, EDG, WE, and IG in Group A, and then we have, and I mean, WE has been losing a lot, but it could just be a patch thing as well. And then in Group B, we have OMG, RNG, and Newbie, who look decent. So the question is kind of, like, do we think that there's, I mean, what could be some of the reasons that teams are kind of doing this, and it's just coincidentally there's competition at the last few weeks? Yeah.
The patches reset everything, and then all the teams are trying to figure it out, so it makes everybody bad for a while, and then it gives everybody a good chance of winning. That's why Jake looks good.
It apparently also makes everyone sign the rosters that people knew would be good. Start the rosters that made people knew would be good at the start of the year.
Exactly.
I still refuse to believe in IG.
I mean, yeah, I don't believe in them long-term goals, but I think they're a really fun team anyway. Like Rookie and his rookies, you know.
Yeah.
No, that's not going to catch on. Okay, we're good.
So with EDG, was it did they actually come out and say like it was because he was underage? Because the Zet thing really annoyed me. Like the fact that EDG kept winning with Zet AD carry was actually like
they weren't transparent about the Zet thing at all, and I think part of it was that they were worried that iBoy would flop and then they'd still have Zet, and it wouldn't seem like they just had Zet because they were waiting for iBoy if they were transparent about it. And then you can get away with a lot more stuff like that in LPL. So I think that that's probably why they didn't explicitly say that Zet was just kind of there until iBoy was of age. But then the question is, like, do we get mad at them like people got mad at TSM for getting Wild Turtle instead of a really hype AD carry to substitute for Double Lift? So,
I mean, they still made it pretty far. So, like, and Zet isn't even an AD carry, really. I mean, I guess now he is, because he's played more competitive games as an ADC than he ever did as a mid laner.
I also think this is like a terrible meta for a player like iBoy to come up, you know, because it's like Ardent Sensor and he can just flash at people with Kog'Maw if he has support.
Okay.
So he's learning all the wrong.
Anything else on this topic? No. Okay. I've added a topic at the end here, promotion relegation, which is happening this weekend in North America. I'm going to dump this topic down so that we can get through it quickly and really so we can address the only thing people will really care about, which is, will P1 or Team Liquid get relegated?
I mean, does it matter?
Yes, I think it does.
Like, do you think it... I guess my question that I'd want to spit back to you would be like, do you actually think it matters within the context of franchising?
Yes, I know
think...
what you mean. I think P1 will... I think there's no way they get in if they get relegated. I don't think their chances of being around next year are incredibly high. I think they have a decent chance, but I think that's not incredibly high. But I think if they get relegated, they just don't. Like, because I don't know. I think Riot will stick their neck out there for Team Liquid maybe if they get relegated, because you know that it's going to feel.
Will.
You know, it's going to feel.
I feel like TL are in, to be honest.
Yeah, maybe, but it's been a pretty big shit show.
I kind of wish they weren't.
Yeah,
I mean, no offense. Like, I understand they're a legacy org, but this year has been a really sad display of incompetence in general. So.
Everybody has.
I was just glad that Mickey's first game, his first like big play, he rotated down. Yeah, rotates down to bot lane, flashes under turret, and dies. I was like, it's perfect. Even though I'm like actually rooting for him to do well, I was just like, It's such a Mickey thing to do.
Luna Bumblebee Tuna says, "Is what Mark said on GTL true? Like, do teams have to pay more if they were relegated out and they get picked for franchising?" Yes. In fact, I doubt that any of the teams that come in through the promotion tournament, if any do, will stick around for next year. But they will get a $3 million payout from whoever takes their spot. So yeah, if TL gets relegated, they have to pay $3 million to take somebody else's spot.
I mean, was it with US? We were talking about with GCU. We were saying maybe would make it if they knocked out P1.
I keep hearing more and more rumors about more like NBA teams applying and big stuff happening. So I just feel like
there's a billion of them.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, part of the reason why it's like, and with the EU rumors, even then, it's like I would rather say okay to Fnatic than GCU.
Okay, so anyway, I think, yes, I do think if P1 gets relegated that it kills their chances. I think if TL, unless they announce some big new partnership, which they might in the next couple of weeks, who knows. And I think with TL, it doesn't matter, but it kind of does, right? Because it's literally like, I mean, that'll be a scar on, they had to buy their way back into the LCS after getting relegated. Like, that's how you end the first half of what the LCS was, or the first phase of what the LCS was. Like, I do think it matters.
I mean, I think it matters in that sense that it tarnishes the org and people are going to hate them the next year if they suck. But it's not like Riot's not going to take them because of that, I think.
Yeah. But back to my question.
Yes.
Do either of these teams get relegated?
I think P1 and TL are equally kind of bad right now. I think I was talking about this yesterday, but it feels like P1 just really doesn't care. On the player level, they just all want to get the fuck out of there. Whereas TL, at least you saw them during their games. Piglet was laughing even though he was playing Bane, and you're kind of like, why the hell are you doing that? The whole team kind of was playing with smiles at different points in the game. Whereas P1 looks depressed. Everyone just wants out. Feels like. But that said, I do think P1's a better team. So I think they're kind of equal, and I think GCU actually has a decent chance. They were really close last time. I think they're maybe a little bit better now. I think the teams are also worse now because Doublelift is not on TL. And you don't have a Lyra to just smash a couple games and win in a game 5. So I think, 2 best of 5s versus those teams. I think they win one and probably get out.
Both of them do.
No, I said GCU takes one out.
Okay. Oh, GCU.
I don't think E United will, right?
No. So then you will probably if you think that they are evenly matched in terms of skill, but you think that P1 doesn't give a shit as much anymore, or their players just want to get out of there.
No, I didn't say they're even in skill. I said that I feel like they're overall even because P1's a better team, but they're depressed.
Sorry.
Yeah. So I think they're about even, and GCU will take one out. I think.
Which one?
I would probably bet more on P1.
P1 getting kicked out or taken out. All right, interesting.
Just a bet.
Emily.
I mean, they're all coin flips to me. It's really hard to predict.
Is it a gold coin flip?
Kelsey Moser's humor is really what carries the show.
I don't know. If I had
one pun per episode.
I don't even know which team I'd rather win in terms of, because I agree with Mark in that in the booth the P1 players just look really sad, whereas TL were just laughing, joking, even in comms when they were dying they were kind of just giggling at each other. I don't know. There's something about me that I don't appreciate the mess that has been TL, but I appreciate that at this point the players just seem to be we're gonna embrace it and we're just gonna have fun playing together. And if that's if you have 2 teams like that, then I'd rather that team win, just because I don't know, it's more fun, I guess. But to me, it's making predictions on something like this is pretty ridiculous, just because none of these teams are neither of these 2 teams are consistent. They both do really dumb things in game. It's just I don't even know what to say about either team right now, to be honest, because they're both just playing like so poorly.
Kelsey, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I guess like part of me kind of would rather root for the team that looks like really upset, because I feel like that team might like care a little bit more in the moment. Also, I feel like P1 had a better year overall, so I don't know. I guess it's kind of like not really relevant, but
it's kind of a similar situation to me though, where like P1 fucked around with their roster a lot too. Yeah. Whereas like TL was sucking and they're like, oh shit, we gotta do stuff, and P1's like, things are kind of working out and they're just messing with their roster nonstop, and now they suck, which is a little bit weirder to me.
Yeah, I could see it. All right, that wraps up our coverage of the promotion relegation match this weekend. Next up we have questions, but first, and Twitch chat by the way, get the questions going. First we have Emily Rand's anime pick of the week.
Yes. So I was talking to Xander at LCS, and I realized that I really don't like a lot of like romantic comedy anime because I usually get bored. But there is one that I do like, and it's going to be the one I recommend this week. You can watch it on Crunchyroll, and it's called Toradora. It's kind of an older show, but I think the characters are really fun, and it's a really fun show. It's really well done.
And the animation is amazing.
I didn't get bored, even though I am not a romantic comedy fan. Actually, the animation isn't really anything to write home about. It has a couple cuts that are interesting, but it's generally just like consistently at a good level, I guess.
What is the premise?
The premise is that it's a very like tried and true, I guess, romantic comedy premise. So, but it's the characters' backstories and the way they
are they in high school?
Make it. Yeah, they're in high school. And there's like the kid that looks like a delinquent, so everybody's terrified of him, even though he's like actually very domestic and good at like cooking and cleaning. He kind of has to take care of his mom. And then there's a girl who's kind of been like, she's tiny and her entire apartment's a pigsty, even though her dad's rich and basically set aside this apartment for her. And she's like cute, but bristles. Everyone calls her like the palm top tiger because she's outwardly very like mean, and it's a defense mechanism. And it just uses a lot of like stereotypical anime tropes, but makes you actually care about the characters. So it works for me. Like it uses a lot of cliches, but because the characterization is good, it ends up being a really good show.
Nice. Well, there you go. And again, the name is?
Toradora.
Toradora. There you go. That's Emily Rand's anime pick of the week. Going into questions. The first question we have, I love it. Ponkson says, what is Mark Z going to do? More content? Tell him he's lazy as fuck.
It's just YouTube channel, Offline TV. Been doing a lot on that. I do this show. I was casting NACS. I do the LCS. I didn't realize that made me lazy. My bad.
And there you go.
But I will. I'll be honest. Yeah, I should put something out on my YouTube every week. So to be fair, yes, I have not been doing what I should this week. Kind of went into that. I'll probably be doing not a blame game, just because I'm sitting on that for a little while. But I'll probably put out a video just about like KDA players versus safe playing.
Your damage rating rants.
It'll get lumped in there as well, probably, because I'm probably, spoiler, gonna vote Jensen MVP, and this is kind of like a pre-defense. Guess setting it up.
Bear's Drink Decaf asks for Kelsey, why is Dylan Falco the greatest coach of all time and is a genius at adapting to meta changes? Bear's Drink Decaf.
Bear's Drink Decaf. That's a solid name. I mean, Dylan Falco's is interesting. I mean, I've done a lot of interviews with Fnatic players and Dylan himself asking about it, and I mean, it seems like a lot of the strategic stuff is still driven by Jez's to an extent, and so I think that's it's a good answer there. Yeah.
All right. Real Duffer says, will Mark C finally iron the black curtain he uses as a backdrop?
No.
77 Hockey says, at Kelsey, why does IG not know what tanks are and how do they still win without them?
I think that they play a lot of stuff that's pretty interesting, and they're like good at closing through lanes. It's really weird to me because they have like zero concept wave management, but I think it's just like they're really good at snowballing top. Like the fact that they can consistently dive like past second turret at 11 minutes or something, I don't know, just says that they have really good coordination between their top and jungle right now. They're really good at playing these junglers that counter jungle tanks well, and then they pick strong mid lane, and Rookie's really good mid laner, and so they get away with that kind of thing pretty easily. So I think that's good, and I also think that their ability to identify like which objectives to contest and their timing of their itemization is actually really good. I mean, of course they're like a mess, but they're always a mess. So an LPL in general is a mess, but I think it's refreshing to see that kind of approach work in the LPL, partly because it is so messy, if you know what I mean. Because usually if it's super messy, then like that more likely the ARAM kind of stuff works. So I think it's nice to see that.
All right. Bear Strength Decaf has a question for Emily. It is Africa beats SKT if blank. Or Africa. Sorry.
I mean, Africa, in my opinion, has actually a pretty decent shot at beating SKT, if only because it is a best of 3 and not a best of 5. And I think that does take away a little bit one of SKT's strengths, which is adapting over a best of 5. So if a best of 3 wouldn't be enough for them to adapt, I actually do think they would adjust over that best of 5 and end up beating Africa. So I think that is actually something that's in Africa's favor, because Africa are really great at coming up with like one or maybe 2 strategies to beat a team that they're like really good at, right? So like that was their MO for most of this year until like a little bit later on in the season, was that they'd prepare really well in one game and they would like perfect game people, and then they'd lose the next 2 games. And they did this against a few of the top teams, and I think that if they can figure out how to win that second game, the fact that it's a best of 3 is actually in their favor. I think they'll be a little bit more prepared. I actually think they rely on Kuro a lot, but he's had a pretty strong season. He doesn't really stand out at all because it's Kuro, but the way the team kind of flexes around him is really interesting. The way they use their side lanes and snowball their side lanes is really interesting. So
didn't Kuro get like the most MVP points this split?
He tied with BDD.
He did.
Oh, he tied. Okay.
But I mean, like, it's weird because very few people know that. Like, I mean, like, he's not a flashy player, I guess. Is what
I wasn't saying like. I just meant like.
Oh no!
I thought I heard. Yeah.
Great split. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like probably, there's one split with the Tigers, or I'd say he's had a career split.
Evolve Jake asks, when will the franchise teams be announced? November, I believe.
Is that confirmed? Just like
yeah, they had it in the.
I think they said it.
Yeah, like the announced NA permanent partnership. All esports.
Can you imagine?
They had the timeline.
If like CLG or something goes to Worlds, or some other team goes to Worlds, or Immortal will be like the most likely candidate, and then they're like somehow make it to semis, and they get the news that they aren't franchised or something for some reason.
That would be terrible.
Sorry.
Yeah, partners announced in November is what it says on the website. Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine that happening, but it would be very interesting. I guess the best candidate would be FlyQuest. Like, FlyQuest makes a run through the gauntlet, and then they get to Worlds, and then it comes out.
Run.
Yeah.
High Quest.
ESPN breaks that FlyQuest doesn't get to stay in the LCS, and then
everyone hates Jacob.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a flashback to last year. All right.
And then they lose in the semis after that article breaks. Everyone's like, they fucking lost because he broke it.
Yeah.
Not because it was SKT, but because it's good.
Trying to see if there's anything else that is worth asking. Okay,
I mean,
we'll go out on this one.
Decaf ask more questions? Because I enjoyed Bear Drink Deep Calf's questions, you know?
Luna, Bumblebee, Tuna, here's the last one. Who are the 3 teams you want to see at Worlds from NA and EU for everyone? I think we should only go, because for the sake of time, and also because I don't care about Europe, we should just pick NA or EU. So Mark and I will do North America, and then Emily and Kelsey can do Europe.
Oh, okay. So
yeah.
All right, you go first, Travis.
Me?
I feel marginalized, like, e-girl support players, you know? Like, I feel like this is a sexist decision.
What? You're in Germany right now.
That's basically you admitting that you think Europe's like the worst region.
No, I just think that was like a really ridiculous tweet for Frostgrain to make. Anyway, let's go.
Oh, I missed that.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Kelsey subtweeting Frostgrain.
You guys are probably all asleep anyway. Let's go.
All right. So, North America, TSM, Immortals, Cloud9, because you always have to have TSM and Cloud9, and then Immortals seem like the strongest other team.
Is this who you want?
Yes, who you want. Who you want.
Okay, who I want. CLG, TSM, C9.
What, you just gonna go with the standard? Also,
yeah,
why CLG? Don't you feel like they're not gonna do the best job of, like, right now they don't look like they would rep North America as well as other
but
teams.
if they get to Worlds, that means that they figured out their problems.
Okay.
I'm living in like the world where like I didn't just.
Okay, so you're formatting the question. So these are clearly the 3 best teams in North America.
Well, yeah, it's like.
Okay.
Well, no, I'm just saying like I want these teams to go because I like the people there. Like I want Tony to go. I love Tony. Like, but I'm not going to be like, oh yeah, if Omargod just sucks and gets completely abused, like yeah, I'm not going to be happy about that.
Yeah.
Like.
All right. Emily, Europe.
I'm gonna go with G2, H2K. Oh, the third one's tough for me. I guess I'll go Fnatic.
All right.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in that order. Like I'm not saying that's what I think is the best, but I'm just saying it was tough for me between Fnatic and UOL just because of problems that each team have had that are wholly and wildly different, by the way. But UOL has been really sloppy for me. So
would it cement your decision if I asked them, so you played like this really cool 1-3-1 early game comp, like is this like have you really been working on this early game part? Like is this something that you've been focusing on and improving this? It's like it's more like we have some comfort picks that are early game picks. Would that be more definitively in the Fnatic camp?
Probably, actually. Sure.
So, yeah.
I think based on those 2 teams, so H2K and G2 definitely. The reason why I was waffling over Fnatic and UOL is just because I want the 3 best teams to go from every region. And I think UOL's issues are a little bit more concerning in terms of how well they'd be able to do than Fnatic's.
All right. Kelsey?
I don't know. I think that it would make sense if we, like, H2K is so difficult, right? Because I feel like their drafts choke in playoffs, like, every time. And it's just,
God,
like,
I forgot about that. No.
Yeah. So, and they don't even, like, they didn't even do well in spring playoffs because they usually do make it to their place match at least. So it's hard for them to qualify on circuit points this time. So it's like really, it's more difficult to just like confidently predict that because obviously the main coach who's constantly criticized for their drafts is still there, as much as we love Prawley. And Prawley is actually really good, but yeah, it's just like this type of thing that is an issue with this team. So I don't know. I think I will say actually G2, Fnatic, UOL then.
Yeah. All right.
Just because you all do have a lot of circuit points. And
I'll stick around for 15 minutes after the show. So if you want to hang out and do QA, that's cool. I'm going to go ahead and let everybody say their goodbyes now. And I also want to give a shout out to Achman143, Sean Lamarck, and Natsuki, who subbed during the show. I couldn't give a shout out because we were talking about stuff. Emily Rand, what's going on with you this week besides Overwatch content?
So my massive LMQ piece on their effects on interregional movement policy and North American meta will be out for all of you who have been eagerly awaiting that and wondering why it didn't come out last week. But I actually have a lot of league content coming out at a few different places this week, so look forward to that. Also, if I had to pick 3 teams coming out of Korea, it would be KT, SKT, and Samsung, actually.
Oh, I should throw that in there.
I did. I wanted to sneak it in my outro. Shout out to Kive.
Kive, okay.
I would go.
He's like become one of the best top players in the world. Not joking. People like never notice him. So shout out to Kive.
Kelsey.
Okay. Interviews as usual. I think like you should check out the Perks interview. He always gives like really fun answers to stuff. I'm doing my annual Otoalma feature because it's very important to have that. And then of course like more exciting stuff. Like I'm doing a lot of EU stuff this week just because it is the last week of regular season and there will be a lot of cool matches. So that's where I am.
All right. Mark?
I will be doing my usual. I'll be trying to shoot something this week for offline TV, trying to maybe go karaokeing. I'll probably, like I said, do a little piece, not necessarily about MVP, but just about KDA player and this and that, and like when is it playing safe and when is it playing to save KDA and stuff like that. And then, yeah, promo relegation tourney, I'll be casting that. So you guys can tune in. Enjoy my great thoughts about League of Legends.
But watch Europe.
Yeah, listen to me, but have Europe playing.
Exactly.
There you go. And
I think I'm okay with that. It's a good compromise.
Yeah.
We're good.
For me, I will be out of town investigating some job stuff somewhere.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Mysterious.
Yeah. But I have a bunch of interviews coming out, including one with Avalie. If you didn't see her, I think a bunch of us are very excited about the fact that she's now made it to the LCS broadcast, and I think did a really good job. She made fun of Pastry Time, and that was when I knew she was going to be fine.
Yeah, that was actually a great moment.
Yeah.
I hate it because I only want to see her once a week at Yahoo, and now she's here 2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah, I don't think she even worked on the days that you worked at Yahoo.
Yeah, she was never there.
Saw her once or twice, I think. Maybe not. Maybe I'm just completely hallucinating.
Yeah.
But can she find elevators? This is the important. Is it relevant that she can't find elevators? Actually.
LCS is all on one floor now.
So
Back when she was freelancing with Travis, is a bigger issue because press area is on the 2nd floor.
There you go. So anyway, I'll have an interview with her coming out probably tomorrow. And yeah, that's the show. You can sub to the channel, but just use Twitch Prime because, let's face it, it's not worth $4.99. And thanks for watching.
Oh, are you just like under